Hey, there's Dave Olson. We haven't heard from him for a while. I think since last time when he told me this is my 5th attempt at the question, which usually works for me. So Dave's got eight upticks, and Dave says, so the Article 5 convention movement is picking up steam. That's where the states call a convention to amend the Constitution instead of fooling around with the Congress. Term limits and a balanced budget amendment seem to be the hot items, to which I would add the line item veto. Do you approve of these? If not, why not? What would you add as a potential amendment, and how would you prefer to see these amendments written and enacted? I am still not convinced that the Constitutional Convention idea will not be gamed by the left. I'm deeply concerned about that. These people live for politics. It's what they do. And I am very concerned that what you are essentially doing is you are unlocking the Constitution. That's exactly what you're doing. If you call it, the Constitution can be amended by the traditional process of having an amendment pass the Congress and then be ratified by, was it 2/3 or 3/4 of the states? I forget. But that's a high hurdle to clear, and it should be a high hurdle. I am very concerned that if you unlock the Constitution with a bunch of people in a room, you could do unlimited damage to the Constitution. Now, with that said, an incredible amount of damage has already been done to the Constitution. So, assuming that you could get this thing to play by the rules, here's what I would do. I would pass an amendment that repealed the 16th, 17th, and 18th Amendment. I don't want to get one wrong. I would repeal the income tax, the 16th, I think. I'd repeal the 17th in a heartbeat and restore the power of the Senate and give it to the states. And I guess the 18th Amendment was prohibition, so it's already been repealed. So I'd repeal 16 and 17. That would be the one amendment. They are hereby repealed. Bam. So there'd be no justification for the income tax. There'd be no justification for an arbitrary line that divides people into rich and poor, good and bad, and so on. That would just go away. Repealing the 17th Amendment would mean that the states would appoint people to the Senate who are not interested in what's good for the people of the state. They're interested in what's good for the state. The representatives of the people are in a house called the House of Representatives. That's called the People's House because it represents the people. When the people elect senators rather than the states selecting senators, the Senate becomes a House of Lords. It's lost its purpose. There's no reason for it. And all it does is just basically encourage cronyism and this professional political class. So I would restore the power of the Senate as the House of the states. I'm in agreement of a balanced budget amendment. I would probably be in agreement of a term limitation amendment, although my amendment would say no re-election. I know everybody used to say, oh, what? I would just say no re-election to the same office. But a person upon being elected to federal office in the House of in Congress, governorship, or the presidency, or state legislatures, once elected, that person is no longer eligible for the same seat, ever. Well, what about the time it takes to gain experience? You're not supposed to be gaining experience from Washington. You're supposed to be sending experience to Washington. That's the idea. So people say, well, if you have no if you have no re-election, then by the time people are just finally figuring out how it works, then they have to go home. Precisely correct, yes. Because we have gotten to a place where Washington tells the representatives how things are done and not the way it's supposed to be, which is the representatives tell Washington how it's supposed to be done. So I would make a term limitation amendment, and I would say no re-election, which means no PACs, no political influence, no influence buying, no lobbying, wouldn't matter. We're not putting away a big money for a war chest. I wouldn't have to spend my second year of my 2-year term trying to raise money for my third term and so on. I would just get rid of it. If you're an extraordinary politician and you start as a representative, then God bless you, run for Senate. And if you do a great job in your 6 years as Senate, then run for governor. And if you do a great job with your 4 years as governor, then run for president and do great 4 years as president. The second term of a president has never produced anything. The second term is just coasting, and it's terrible. That includes Ronald Reagan and people I admire. So that would be my amendment. I would do something to clarify the fact that the Supreme Court does not outrank the Constitution. And I would do something to say that the power granted to the Supreme Court to rule laws unconstitutional is in the Constitution. And so when they say something like, Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce among the states, foreign powers, and Indian tribes, I would make sure that that meant it was limited to states, foreign powers, and Indian tribes, and leave us the hell alone. Because if they wanted it to be what the progressives wanted it to be, it would say Congress shall have the power to regulate terms among the commerce among the people. And it doesn't say that. So the reason that the Commerce Clause is used to do everything, including justify Obamacare and forcing Americans to buy things that they don't want to buy, Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce among the states, and people live in states. There we go. This kind of chicanery, this kind of low-level sophistry, only works because people are utterly ignorant of the document. And I had heard the Commerce Clause excuse for my entire life and never paid much attention to it because I didn't pay much for politics. But when I started getting into it, I heard about the Commerce Clause. I said, oh, maybe the Commerce Clause does kind of, allow this kind of thing. And then, I did then what I did. I read the Commerce Clause, and I was astonished. I was flabbergasted at how clear and simple it is. And there's no argument about it. The Supreme Court says the Supreme Court's wrong. And I know they're wrong because I can read the sentence. It's in English and it's very simple and it says what it says. And we've identified these three parties throughout the whole Constitution: federal government, the United States, the states, and the people. And this is what it says. This is the law. And the Supreme Court is wrong because this document is what gives the Supreme Court power in the first place. There you go. So that's what I would do in a convention of the states. And I'd get up there and I'd start, I'd get on my soapbox and start pounding the good book and see if I could convince people. Let's do one more here. I'll see if I can find somebody who we don't hear from too often. Hey, here's one. I haven't read the question, but I like the start. Eric Blake says, hey, Bill, I'm a relative newcomer to the lounge, but I've been a major fan for a long time. Thank you very much. I'm the guy who sent you and Clavin the question about the politics of film noir. That was a great question on that show. I had some really brilliant, insightful, and very witty things to say about that, and Clavin basically nodded when I was talking. Anyway, my question is, some time ago you noted that anti-heroes like Clint Eastwood's Western characters were more interesting than marble monument types a la John Wayne. But more recently on NRA TV, you've mentioned the surge of on-screen anti-heroes as an example of problems in our current pop culture. So has your view of the value of anti-heroes changed as a whole, and if so, how? It's a great question. Nice way to wrap up an evening show about talking largely about heroes. What I did not realize when I was condemning, well, let's take Clint Eastwood as a specific example. Let's take the Clint Eastwood characters. He's got a name. Somebody will tell me. Even though he's never named, it's the drifter or the man with no name, whatever. But essentially, throughout the spaghetti westerns, Clint played the same basic character. He's got a little thin cigar in his mouth, and he's got his hat, and he squints, and it's the same guy in Fistful of Dollars and Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and all the rest of it. Now, this guy is certainly not a hero, and he's not a hero in the in the John Wayne version of the hero. So I had said that he's kind of an anti-hero. But that's not exactly true. And the reason I realized that was a mistake is because if you think about it, nothing that I'm aware of that character did is destructive to the ideals that make America great. I think that's really it. In other words, he can be the kind of guy who would, break a bunch of laws, maybe gun down somebody. I don't remember seeing him gun down somebody in cold blood because then he would be an anti-hero. But he was a non-heroic person who ended up being kind of the hero. And I wasn't able to see that. What he did not do was he didn't tear down America. He didn't tear down the government. He didn't do any of these things. As a matter of fact, let's go to the other anti-hero that Clint played so well. And I had a good chance to hear this from his own mouth. In a small group of people. It was a real, another transformational moment for me. Let's talk about Dirty Harry. So Dirty Harry, is Dirty Harry an anti-hero? I might have said that he was a while ago, but he's clearly not. And once I heard Clint talk about Dirty Harry, I realized, well, actually, of course he's not an anti-hero. He is a hero. He's just an unheroic hero. He's not a marble monument hero. But when the man with no name, yeah, there you go. So what do I mean by that, and what did Clint mean by that? Well, Clint said when he made the first Dirty Harry movie, he was watching the news over the course of months or years, and he was so disgusted by the court system using technicalities to get murderers off. This was the beginning, I want to say the beginning of the 70s, when this thing was starting to pick up steam. You know, you misspelled his name on the search warrant, therefore the case is thrown out, therefore the murderer walks the streets and kills again. That's pretty much the kind of thing we're talking about. And Clint said he wanted to do a movie for the victims. He wanted to do a movie for the victims of crime. And since the system was no longer administering justice, he had to create a character who was at war with the system, which would make him an anti-hero, except it's the system that's corrupt. So he is, in fact, at war with a corrupt, unjust system, and he is, as a matter of fact, Dirty Harry is a fighter for justice. Now, Dirty Harry is not, as I said, a model monument kind of guy. He'll blow a guy's head clean off. But he won't blow an innocent person's head clean off. Dirty Harry understands who he's dealing with, and he doesn't need to be told what to look for. He knows criminals and murderers when he sees them. And he is administering the justice that is missing in society. So he is a hero. He's just not a heroic hero. He's in the traditional sense. He's not self-sacrificing, and he's not the guy in the white hat, and he doesn't insist on taking this person prisoner because that's the way we fight. He's not that guy at all. He's not a we can be better than this kind of guy. He's not a we should aspire to be like him kind of guy. He's not he's not the kind of guy you want to hold up as a role model for your kids. He's kind of a psychopath, Dirty Harry. But he's a psychopath for justice. And he's on the side of justice and not on the side of the law. And that's a very important distinction, because the only reason that Dirty Harry exists is because justice and the law had diverged so much as a result of the progressives that you could no longer do both at the same time. You could no longer be a member of the system, the police force, and still see justice done. The rules of the game had changed so much and gotten so far away from justice that you had to make a decision, and the decision is, do you want to be law-abiding? Do you want to follow the policies and, sort of play by the book kind of thing? Or are you going to rebel against and essentially become a traitor to the police principles because you see that these principles have changed to the degree now where they're not only not administering justice, they're preventing justice. Was it Brewdaddy 111? No, who said that? Tiki Rocket, it's a great name, said Dirty Harry. No, that's not it either, about the tension between law and justice. This is the point I was just making. What was the line? Who was it? I just want to see who said something. It was really good. Ohio Castle said Dirty Harry is a knight errant, a Ronin. That's exactly what he is. He's a knight. He's a knight errant. He is which meant a knight who is on a mission. If you tell, Galahad to find the Holy Grail, what you're basically doing is you're writing a hall pass for Galahad. He doesn't have to come to the court anymore. He's a knight errant. He's on an errand now, and he is basically going to do what he has to do until he accomplishes his mission or dies trying. So, yeah. So this is a really fun show, actually, talking about all these things. It's nice when, just by sheer randomness, things kind of tidy up and end that way. And what are we looking at here? Oh, my God, my vision is getting so bad, but this is black type on dark, but it looks like an hour 18. I'd rather do a good hour, 20 minutes, than a lousy 3 hours, so I'm going to have to call it a day here. Get a couple emails on fire off, and then I'm going to go home because I have a home now, and I have somebody waiting for me, and I sit out on the porch and eat dinner and It's just absolutely lovely. All right, well, that'll do it, I guess, for episode 161 of the Stratosphere Lounge, brought to you, as always, by the paying members of BillWhittle.com, who are, in fact, responsible for this this camera and the lights and the electricity and all the rest. Thank you very much for joining us, and it's going to be a fun week. Once again, if you wrote about Star Citizen, I swear I will get back to you. We got all of them collated. I have just not known what to say because I've still been trying to get these things worked out. But in any event, that'll happen shortly, and we'll have some more fun stuff to show you. And even if you think it's a dumb idea, at least I'm having more fun than I've had in 10 years. So there you go. All right, that'll do it for the show. Again, thanks for joining us. Everybody, be careful out there. You guys, don't take any wooden nickels. And we expect that we will see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye now.